Welcome to Rising Stronger Radio, where we explore mental health from a more holistic perspective to empower you to break free from symptoms like anxiety, depression, fatigue, lack of motivation, and addictive behaviors, and instead create an environment both inside and out that is more conducive to healing, vitality, and living a purposeful life. We focus on topics like the power of nutrition, movement, and other lifestyle habits, how to navigate the toxicity and pitfalls of the modern world, as well as philosophical, spiritual, and religious concepts to help you bring out the best in yourself and find your place and purpose in creation. My name is Keith. I'm a holistic health coach and independent mental health researcher. I'm also someone who has faced significant struggles with anxiety, depression, addiction, and other chronic health issues. If you haven't already, you can head over to my website, risingstronger.com, and download my free high mileage foods for mental health guide. I also offer a free 30-minute breakthrough chat if you're interested in personalized guidance in dialing in your nutrition and lifestyle habits to support energy, clarity, and happiness. With that said, let's get into today's episode. All right, welcome back to Rising Stronger Radio. This is episode number 7. I'm your host, Keith, and today we're going to talk about depression, and more specifically, some fairly simple and accessible habits or lifestyle practices that I have found to be really powerful in kind of warding off depression or overcoming depression, or even maybe a better way of stating it, of cultivating well-being, because I think that should be, the focus for anybody who has depression, anxiety, or any other, physical or mental health issue. Keeping our sight on what we want and not focusing too much on what we're fighting against. So these things are practices that can really help in that way. And you can replace in this sense, depression with anxiety, potentially even like attention issues, excess stress. They all go together in a lot of ways. And in the sense that these are just general ways to improve our well-being, but not, they're not non-specific. These are still specific ways that can have a powerful impact on the brain as well. So I don't mean them general in the sense that they don't target, specifically our mental health. And I do want to say that none of this is medical advice. I'm not a doctor, and I would take this as an invitation to explore these things, add them onto anything that you already do. But again, don't take it as medical advice. Before we do talk about the specifics, the habits or lifestyle practices, I want to just touch on depression a little bit. And if you have listened to any of my other podcasts or videos or, content on website or blogs, you'll have already come across the fact that, I see mental health differently than, most mainstream professionals. My view on mental health has come from my own experience. But in the difference is that whereas a lot of people fall into the limiting belief, let's say, or the incomplete understanding of mental health being the result of chemical imbalances or genetic issues, which could play a role at some point in time. That is again a limited way to see these things, and I think that much more useful, it's much more useful to look at depression more in the sense of a sign, an intelligent sign from our bodies and brains that something is off. And we can get those signs because something is off physically. We can get, experience these symptoms that are signs because something is off externally in our lives, too much stress, meaninglessness. There's a lot of different factors, but anytime we just treat something like depression as a random meaninglessness, nagging symptom that we just need to medicate to get away, we often miss, the gift that can lie within that is an indicator to us that something needs to change in our lives. And it's also important, I've probably said this on every episode so far, but to understand that mental health isn't just mental. So to think of depression as just something that's strictly the result of brain chemistry, or that is the root cause of the problem, I don't think that science actually shows that. And I don't think that, God willing, in the future, that's not what most mental health practitioners will actually believe, but it's largely the way that it's viewed now. And, in addition to all that, I think it's good to understand, or to start to develop the context of seeing the fact that the way we live in the modern world is very conducive to depression and stress and unhappiness. And, humans didn't always live the way that we do, super fast paced, constantly pursuing material goods and more possessions and more money, being very driven financially. And there's a ceiling to these things, is what's important to understand. It's not that we don't need a certain amount, or, ideally that we don't have a certain amount of these, but past a certain point, they can actually inhibit our ability to, be content and satisfied and happy. Material possessions, I mean. It's a abnormal thing the way that we eat in our culture, mostly, fast food and junk food and easy to prepare food, or like quick foods, our lacks of movement, like a whole conglomeration of things, which we're going to get into. But it's just good to see that the way that we live in the modern world is much more conducive to depression than happiness. And it's important to understand that. I think it's really important to understand that, because we are, I think, treating a lot of people as if their depression is something abnormal or something to get rid of. And I think it's actually a very normal thing that there's so many people depressed, because the way that we live is it's just not really the way that humans are meant to live. But we'll get into more of that. Hopefully that makes sense. But let's get into the practices. So the first one is, and these are things, again, that if you struggle with depression, or you feel like your mood and mental health aren't where you feel like they could be, or aren't where they once were, that I would invite you to try these things. And again, I stress that it's not medical advice, and it shouldn't be considered a treatment. And I would see them more as building toward well-being, rather than, fighting anything or treating anything. But the first one is bright light in the morning. And remember, these are all, like, you can do a million things naturally and, on your own to help boost mental health and well-being. These are ones that I think are super accessible. They're, for the most part, free or close to free. And most human beings have access to these things. So this is where we're starting with these. It's not the like the end all be all of what one could do. But bright light in the morning. So most of us in the modern world start our day with the light from screens, which has an effect on our stress hormones, effect on the rate at which cortisol rises in the morning. And this impacts our brain chemistry. It impacts the chemistry of our body. It impacts a lot of things. It's not ideal. As opposed to that, what, most human beings for the history, or for a very long time, would do in the morning was get outside, whether it was a mandatory thing or by choice. Getting outside and getting morning light helps to regulate our circadian rhythms, which plays a significant role in both our mental and physical health. So 5 to 10 minutes in the morning of sunlight, and it's okay if it's cloudy or raining, even standing like underneath, a covering, or out of the rain if it's raining, and just looking in the direction of the sun is good. But it can't be through a window. The window blocks, or windows block, certain frequencies or spectrums, certain frequencies on the spectrum of light, I guess you would say. But morning light also has plays an important role in sleep at night. So by getting morning light, we are setting ourselves up for a better night's sleep because we're turning on all the things that we want on during the day, and we're basically setting our body up to release melatonin, our sleep hormone, better or like more properly at night, which number two we'll get into a little bit more. So if you can't get outside, or there are days where that just, won't happen, there's also, you can get what are called mood lamps. There's a ton of different names for them, but there's one that I own and use and like and would recommend called Verilux Happy Light, and you can buy it on Amazon. They're not that expensive, but you just turn that on while you're doing whatever, getting ready in the morning, cooking, and it gives you this effect of bright morning light. I don't think it's as good as going out and getting sunlight, but it's definitely better than nothing. And for a lot of people, it might be, it could be enough, but it's definitely worth trying if, you can't get outside. And in addition to just our mental health, morning light will make us more resilient to stress, boost mood, boost our immune system. Like, there's a ton of different reasons why morning light is good. And we are, as human beings, like, we are designed to interact with light. Light contains a lot of information for our body and brain. The second half of that is to block blue light at night. And this is, again, something that is fairly it's fairly new in terms of like human existence. For most of our existence, nighttime was our nighttime light would have been candlelight or the sunlight or firelight, and all of those sources of light are in the orange, red, and yellow spectrum, and that's actually conducive for good sleep. Blue light, which is what is in our light bulbs, our TVs, our computer screens, our phones, is more like midday sun. So when we're staring at screens or have a bunch of lights on at night, it doesn't mean that we're not going to be able to fall asleep. That's not an accurate measure of that. But it can very much impact the quality of our sleep. And, our sleep is so critical for our mental health. I have a blog post that I'll put on Substack about sleep with some more tips. And then I have a podcast, I think it's episode number 6, that's a really deep dive into sleep. So if you have challenges with sleep, you can check that out. But just blocking blue light at night, there's other reasons why it's good too. It kind of forces us to do other things other than sit in front of a screen, which I think can be good. But our circadian rhythms play a significant role in our mental health. And so getting light in the morning and avoiding too much light, or ideally, you can wear blue light blocking glasses. You can get light bulbs that are more in the like incandescent light bulbs would be, more ideal. That's what we have in our house. There are multiple reasons. I guess I'll save it for another time why they are better. But those two things, they're really one thing, two sides of the same coin, the morning light and the blocking of evening blue light. And they are, low-hanging fruit for improving mental health. For blue light blocking glasses, my wife and I have had the brand Swanwick glasses for like 5 years, and we both really like them. You can also get them on Amazon, and in my opinion, they work well. They have good reviews on there. But that can be a way if you do have to be on a screen, or you do choose to be on a screen still, they'll at least, mitigate some of that. And again, better than nothing for sure if you can't or aren't willing to, put the phone down, turn the computer off, turn the TV off. The next one is around breathing. And I also have 2 YouTube videos on the why proper breathing is so important and how to relearn how to breathe. But I can say pretty with certainty from both my personal experience and in working with other people that for an adult living in this world, if we haven't relearned, like taken the time to relearn how to breathe, we're not breathing properly. I haven't worked with one person in a movement perspective around like kettlebells and gym related, movement where breathing is not, impaired. And this happens because of our stress levels, because most of us grow up sitting most of the time in school. Most of us still probably sit. We wake up, get in a car, drive to work, sit at work all day, come home, drive home, come home, sit to eat dinner, sit on the couch. Like sitting is, they say sitting is the new smoking. I think sitting, it's really something to try to do less, or when we need to sit, find other ways than just sitting, in chairs and on couches. These are the things that they have a much different impact than like sitting on a floor or sitting on a cushion. But sitting impairs our breathing, and relearning how to breathe. Our breathing has a direct connection to our mind. When we're breathing through our nose and properly using our diaphragm, these are signals to our brain that everything in our environment, everything in our surroundings are okay. Like it's okay to just unwind, down regulate. But when we're breathing improperly in the upper lobes of our lungs, or breathing shallowly, or, when we don't understand, I don't want to say don't understand, but haven't regained the ability to breathe with our diaphragm, so important. We're sending signals to our brain that there's something worth being worked up about, or there's something worth being on guard about. And this is where a lot of people just can't seem to relax, or are always in like an upregulated state, just kind of always in a state of, even if it's mild, like anxiety and stress, even if there's nothing externally to, be stressed about or to be anxious about. So breathing plays such a huge role. I would definitely suggest the two YouTube videos I have on how to, relearn how to breathe diaphragmatically. But even something that you can do as you're listening to this is just explore expanding your inhales and exhales. So most people, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see my hand kind of going up and down, but have very quick breaths. So it might be like a second or a second and a half in, second and a half out, and they're just like spikes. Ideally, what we want are more like very slow waves, where we're inhaling over a period of time, or, like let's say inhaling over at least 3, 4, 5 seconds would be, ideal. And that might include a little pause there for some people, or, some techniques might call for something like that. But even just slowing down the rate at which we inhale, slowing down the rate at which we exhale, pausing after the exhale for a second, like these are natural breathing patterns. If you watch, we have a 21-month-old son. If you watch like a baby or a young child breathe who hasn't been their breathing hasn't been corrupted by lots of sitting, their breathing patterns are way different. But this directly impacts our nervous system, our brain, our thought patterns. So relearning how to breathe properly is super important. And the next one is to establish a movement practice. And please hear me on this specifically. What I'm not referring to necessarily, and maybe not referring to overtly, is just going to the gym, like just going and working out, an hour a couple times a week. Like that can be good. It can also, not always be. It can be misdirected, let's say. But what I'm talking about is moving more. And this is why I say that the mental health is not just mental, is because when we're stuck in our head, when we feel like we're ruminating, when we're feeling anxious, when we're feeling low, we tend to try to think our way out of these things, which rarely, if ever, works. And it tends to be a much more effective strategy to go to our body. When we're stuck in our head, going to the body is a much more effective way of kind of breaking that cycle. I forget who said this, but it's a good analogy, or a good kind of thought process, is that when we're in that place, stress, anxiety, feeling depressed, feeling low mood, whatever it is. Going and doing something physical for a period of time, which I'll get more specific about that in a minute, what it does is just break that temporarily, and that allows us to kind of get back in the driver's seat, because you can probably relate to just that feeling where no matter how much you're trying to think or outthink your own thinking, you're just stuck there. You kind of become a victim to your thoughts and thought loops and things like that. And going to the body just bypasses that. And that's how we're designed. We're designed that our bodies affect our brains and vice versa. So movement is something that, again, it's one of the places in the modern world that is so unnatural, that we sit so much and we're so sedentary and inactive. And so for most people, just going to the gym like for an hour after work or something, it's not really enough. Like, again, we're sitting on the way to work, sitting at work, sitting on the way to the gym. We go to the gym. All right, that's good. And we sit on the way home, sit when we get home. Like it just winds up being something that not only isn't it enough, but it's not really natural to how humans like work either. Like in the history of our existence, we really never, like, if we went to our ancestors, they were moving a lot, but they weren't just getting up and like 45 minutes now we're going to like put in a workout. They were doing things all day long. So when I say establish a movement practice, and I'm going to tie this one to number one with the morning light, personally, and I if I could go back, I would say this at the beginning so that it's heard. But personally, I think the best thing that a person can do, the lowest hanging fruit with the most potential benefit, is to go for a morning walk. Just get outside. Even if it's like the weather's not ideal, like it can be such a good practice for like emotional and physical resilience. But just getting outside, taking a walk, getting morning sunlight, getting some exercise in, getting the metabolism going, like all of these things are so helpful for our state of mind, our short and long-term mental health, our health in general. But a morning walk is such a powerful tool. And walking in general is such a powerful tool. I'm walking, if I could only pick one form of exercise that I could do the rest of my life, it would definitely be walking. And I think that it should be the foundation of any exercise routine or movement practice, or just how people think of exercise to begin with. From there, from walking, then having a couple sessions a week of something like strength training. I think weights are better than cardio, like for quote unquote workouts. I think that there's I think that's a better way to go. Personally, I like kettlebells, as you may already know. Like, that's something that I teach, and something that is a big part, an important practice in my life and my own well-being, and something that's really easy to do from home. You don't need a lot of space. You can take them outside. But anyway, walking, some form of strength training, and then something, if you're unfamiliar with original strength, it's another kind of one of the modalities that I have that I use with people. And it's more geared around the nervous system, but also tapping into the body's kind of innate strength. It's a really interesting thing. It's really powerful. You can take something like original strength and in less than 5 minutes, sometimes even like 2 minutes, be in a completely different state of mind by just doing these very simple exercises. But I can't stress enough that thinking about going to the body when the mind isn't where we want it to be should be a reaction. It should be something that we do automatically. It'll save us so much agony. It'll break us out of those thought loops. It can, movement can seriously help to improve mental health and like resolve a lot of things that are related to mental health, issues that people struggle with. Movement is medicine for the mind, for sure. But think about it as spread out. try to get some walking in, even if it's 5 or 10 minutes at a time, fine. Try to get some movement in. I'll go more into original strength somewhere else. You can also look that up, but like crawling, rocking, breathing, head nodding, like these are things that you can take a minute or 2 minutes multiple times throughout the day and just breaking up all that sitting, getting an extra movement, and then adding in like strength training and things like that. But I'm going to be doing a lot of work around the kettlebells as time goes on. And that's something that I feel really strongly that can help a lot of people. And, you know, we're designed to be strong. Like we have that in us. And let me see if I can find this quote. There's a quote that I think is so true around strength that the person who quoted it was Mark, or the quote comes from, I think, Mark Rippletoe, but it's something, I may not say it perfectly, but it's something along the lines of man, I want to find it now. Let me see if I can. There we go. A weak man is not as happy as the same man would be if he were strong. And I think that's really true. And it's really simple too, but we are designed to be strong. I believe that. And, you know, I think that that's one of the things that taps into what can help to make us like happier, not in the sense of being elated all the time, but happier in the sense that like we're content with who we are and how we feel about ourselves. And I do think that strength training is something that every man to some, you know, some capacity should do. And it doesn't have to be at the gym. It doesn't have to be going crazy. It doesn't have to be powerlifting, but just getting stronger has such a powerful impact on the brain and body and our health and the way we see ourselves. So I think it's worthwhile to, you know, to take that into consideration and keep an eye out. As I mean, if you're interested in learning kettlebells, you can, you know, you can contact me. You can fill out the form on my website, but I think it's such a great place to start. I think kettlebells are, you know, the best form of movement, especially for modern people and especially when done properly or learned properly. The next one on the list is ending showers with cold water. And I think at this point, you know, most people have heard of doing cold showers, but cold water can be really helpful, especially right in the moment. Like getting a cold shower can help to lower inflammation. It's almost impossible to take a cold shower and not step out feeling a lot better, more energized, uplifted, etc. But taking cold showers regularly, like there's data showing that cold showers have an impact on stress, anxiety, depression, and it's another tool for building emotional resilience. Like stepping out of what's comfortable, deliberately choosing to do something, which is the same thing with strength training, but deliberately choosing to do something that is, you know, uncomfortable in order to, you know, bring resolve, and in order to step out of that thing, strength training, cold shower, and feel like just normal reality is a little bit better. When we don't have that contrast, we get bored. Like that's one of the reasons why exercise, and specifically something at least mildly intense exercise and cold showers, is so effective, because when we're just like here all the time, or we're just at like a baseline all the time, we forget how amazing it is to just like have even a general sense of well-being, not to be sick, not to be like extremely fatigued. And so it's the contrast of doing like a hard workout that when we're done and we come back down and recover, we go, oh, like this is nice. This is now I can do, you know, sit down or like do something else, and I'm grateful just to feel that way after that intense exercise. Or we step into a cold shower and it's uncomfortable, and we're foregoing a very comfortable hot shower, you know, whatever, in order to bolster our resilience, in order to provide that contrast that when we step out, just what before was mundane, what before we went into the shower, before we went into the workout was mundane, the fact that we were comfortable, now we value it more because we've, voluntarily subjected ourselves to discomfort. It's a very, in my opinion, and definitely my experience, it's a really important and powerful practice to find ways to make ourselves uncomfortable temporarily in order to value comfort in a different way. So the next two are also two sides of the same coin, and these are the last two. The first, which would technically be number 6, is to cut out junk food. And if you're somebody who struggles with, mood, anxiety, mental health, stress, things like that, this can be super impactful and so worthwhile. And I go into this more in other places or in more detail than I want to here for the sake of time, but human beings are not designed to eat most of the food that we eat today. The processed, junky, highly palatable, tastes really good type of food, but it has such a, especially if we're predisposed to depression or something like that, it can be the root cause for a lot of people of depression, especially if you have digestive issues, constipation, diarrhea, or loose stools, a lot of gas and things like that. If you find that you have those types of symptoms, in my opinion, that's where you should look to address mental health issues, because that's the case for most people. Our gut and brain are so intricately connected. For some people, you're probably aware of that, or maybe you're aware of that. Maybe you haven't heard that, but it's so important. And so just, there's many different paths to go down in terms of food, and it can get very cult-like and religious, but as just a baseline place to start, a good phrase that I didn't come up with is just eat real food. Like, start there. Fruits and vegetables, and if you can, quality meats, cutting out the ultra processed foods. This is also what I do with people. If you feel like having guidance in this way would be helpful, this is a bulk or kind of the cornerstone of the coaching that I do around nutrition, specifically targeted for mental health. Feel free to reach out. I have a guide on my website, which is technically called High Mileage Foods for Mental Health, but it's essentially, I think it's the 10 best foods, in my opinion and experience, for providing the nutrients and different, nutrients, micronutrients, the different building blocks that we need for good mental health. And then also 10 or so of the worst foods, or the things to try to avoid that can, so significantly impact our mental health. So you can check that out. But as a rule of thumb, just starting with eating real food. And that can be hard for a lot of people, breaking, habits, breaking sugar addiction, breaking junk food addiction, kind of reining in a better relationship with food. Like I say to people often, that a rightly ordered relationship with food is that it is nourishment and fuel first and pleasure second. If we look at it that way and kind of abide by that principle, food is going to help us. But when we invert that and see food as pleasure first, and then maybe fuel or nourishment second, or we don't really take that into account, that's when food works against us. The very thing that's supposed to fuel us and give us energy and keep us going and nourish us actually becomes the thing that can either be the cause or contributor to fatigue and depression and sleep issues and all this. So, food is a thing that, again, in our modern world, we just don't realize because it's so common around us. But most of what most people eat is not actually food, and the human body doesn't do so well when we're doing that, and nor the brain. But the way that we eat is for sure a big reason why we see the levels of mental health issues that we do in our modern culture. On the other side of that coin is cutting out junk food for the brain, or junk information, let's say. And so whereas with food, we would want to aim for eating real food, eating nourishing food, with what comes into our mind, we want to be it's the same kind of principle, and the way that the brain and body are, we have a they're so interconnected. Like it's a I don't know why I can't think of the term that I'm looking for, but our brain and body, to use the same term that I've been, are two sides of the same coin. And when we're taking in junk food, it's going to impact our brain negatively. When we're taking in junk information, it's going to impact our body negatively. And obviously junk food impacts our body negatively, and obviously junk information impacts our brain negatively. That goes without saying. But my point is that they both impact each other. So cutting out junk food and being discerning with the information that we allow into our minds, cutting out junk information, doing both of those at the same time can be so powerful. And so with information, what I'm referring to is turn off the news. Like, turn off anything to do with anything like that, especially if you feel like you're struggling with your mental health. Like, that's, I know some people can't really get down with this idea. Probably, I'm almost 34, probably people my age less so, but a little bit of the older generation, they really have a hard time with the idea of like giving up news and not being super tuned in. But in the same way, like anything on social media that might be like approaching current events from other angles, let's say. I mean, there's relevance to some of this stuff, but most people, or especially if you are struggling, let's say, these are things to put on pause, to put to the side, not to be filling the brain with things that are super, that just arouse our nervous system, let's say, that get us worked up. News, conspiracy stuff on social media, or just general news on social media, but even social media in general, just scrolling, taking in, like mostly useless data and information, and so much of it. It's not just that it's not great, it's that we go through, like, with things like Instagram and that kind of thing, so much in a matter of minutes, and replacing that with uplifting, motivational, spiritual kinds of content, information, ideas. And that could be conversations, it could be things that we listen to or read or watch. Like, trying that for a month, no junk food and no junk information, there's little that will have the power that can have to kind of reset our brain and body and get us feeling better. So I think that, both of those are, I've said this about all of them, obviously, I think they're worthwhile, but, I think that all of these things, the junk food and the junk info, avoidance, as well, like, they're all just really powerful things that are right in front of us that most of us could do without changing too much. And for the things that we don't want to do, could stop doing without like too much effort, other than breaking habits and kind of going through the pain that can, bring emotionally, or in terms of how, attached we are to our habits and routines. But again, going back to what I said in the beginning, like, depression and anxiety are intelligent signals from our brain and body. Brain and body is important to see, because they're not separate, that something in our lives needs to change. And again, it could be something external: bad relationship, meaninglessness, too much stress, poor diet, or that's internal and external, but what we're eating isn't working when we take it in, not sleeping enough, all of these things. And so when we look at them that way, as intelligent signals trying to, and really, you can take the perspective, be useful to us, They're trying to avoid us 5 years from now being in the same place. I'm still in this crappy relationship. I'm still eating junk food and my health is suffering as a result, and I have no energy or motivation as a result. Like, when we see them that way, rather than try to try to fight against them, but try to align with like, these things are here to tell me something, to teach me something. The pain that I feel, or the discomfort I feel, or the unsettledness that I feel is here to tell me that I should be. And I'm not trying to say that, like, make these things out not to be difficult. I know from experience how challenging they can be. It's just that having a different attitude, that the challenges are there to serve us and show us something, and not just random to hurt us, and things that, or to make our lives, random things that do make our lives difficult for no reason. That's just not true. And it's a paradigm that hopefully, the mainstream can break out of, because with a majority of the people that I work with, the most important thing that I can do, the most important thing I can do is not help them eat better, change lifestyle, change the way that they're relating to thoughts, or help improve that, or, start moving or anything. It's to break out of the paradigm that what they're experiencing is like, has no meaning, or is just something to like try to get over, and not to go through, and to grow through, and to overcome by getting stronger, by getting more resilient, by addressing, the leak, so to speak, in their lives, internally and externally. And so we just have such a, I think, an incomplete and backward understanding when it comes to mental health in the modern world. And unfortunately, people stay stuck because of that. They have a hard time breaking out. And what I meant before is that most people, that I see, have just been told that they have some sort of chemical imbalance as a result of like a genetic issue, and they don't realize that. Let me take a step back. They're told that thing, which is very disempowering. It basically says you're just at the mercy of whatever randomness comes your way. And, sometimes it might get better, sometimes it might not. This pill or medication might help, but likely it won't. Rarely long term do these things work for people, if ever. Although certainly sometimes people short term notice a difference, but there's reasons other than what most understand for that. But it's that on the other end, it's so empowering if a person's ready. It's kind of like the quote, with great power comes great responsibility. And it can be very empowering to understand that we can do so much to help ourselves, and that a lot of the reasons that we find ourselves in the places that we are not our fault, but we partake in doing them, often unknowingly. And so if we're willing to accept that we're the ones that need to change, that we need to let go of certain habits that maybe we've adopted, certain mindsets that we've taken on from other people, like all of the above, again, it's not our fault that we find ourselves where we are, but it is our responsibility, should we choose to accept it, to change, to grow, so that we can move forward. And with that attitude, challenges like anxiety and depression and addiction can be the most important things that happen to us, because they give us the kick or the shakeup that we need to move forward, to break out of the stagnation that is comfortable a lot of times, but it's often miserable, and it's often not where we know we're not supposed to stay. So anyway, that I'll pause there. As I mentioned earlier, my website has a couple of resources, a free guide that you can download. If you feel like you need personalized guidance, you can set up a free, I call it a breakthrough chat, but a free 20-minute call. You can do that on my website to talk, kind of get an idea of where you're at now, establish that, where you want to be, what's holding you back, discuss, individualized coaching, and check out the YouTube videos on breathing, you can find that on the Rising Stronger YouTube channel. The podcast and blog on sleep if you need to dive deeper into sleep. And yeah, give these things a try. I invite you, with all sincerity, to give these things a try and see how much they can help to boost and improve your overall well-being. And you don't have to do it all at once. These things are simple enough that they could be done, but if you feel like you just want to pick one, or one really stands out, like, start somewhere and just get that momentum moving and then build on it. But it doesn't have to be as complicated as we make it. And our bodies and brains are designed, and spirits are, I believe, wholeheartedly designed to heal if we give them the right environment and have the right tools and understanding. So know that your biology, your psychology, your spirit, like, all of these things are like, they want to heal. They're ready to do so. They're just waiting for us to lay out the pathway to do that. So thank you for listening. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment. If you have enjoyed this, please leave a review. And yeah, I'll see you next time. Thank you. All right. Thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed this episode, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening. If you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe, and head over to risingstronger.com. You can join my growing email list by entering your email address or downloading my free guide, the High Mileage Foods for Better Mental Health Guide. I do offer a free 30-minute coaching consultation. You can sign up for that there as well. And again, I appreciate your time. I'll see you in the next episode.